Okay, this is chapter two. This is the third week. So we're tackling chapter two, conception and genetics. And there's me, and that's where I work. Okay, that's good. So let's go ahead and get started with conception and genetics. Maybe. Let's do this first. Let's do this first. There we go. Okay. I love this picture. I got to tell you, I love that picture because it doesn't look like anything, okay? You can't recognize any female anatomy from this, except it's accurate in that, yes, there is a vagina, yes, there is a uterus, these are the fallopian tubes, and these are the ovaries. I like the fact that it shows you how big we're talking about. The uterus is only 7 to 9 centimeters tall. The cervix is 2 to 3 centimeters right there. Fallopian tubes are tiny. Yeah, all of this stuff is fairly small. The length of the fallopian tube is 5 to 8 centimeters. So vagina is 7 to 9 centimeters. How much is a centimeter? Let me see, look at my. It's in inches. Okay. Well, anyway, not very much. The cervix is only 3 to 5 inches inside the vagina. Anyway, okay. So for all the good stuff to happen, conception has to take place when a single spermatozoa, one sperm, combines with a single ova in the woman's fallopian tube. It has to take place in the fallopian tube. If it takes place anywhere else, the zygote will uh, probably attach itself too low in the uterus, and the lady will lose the pregnancy. A woman is born with all the ova that she will ever have. She's born with about 400,000 of them. Through her lifetime, she certainly won't use all 400,000, that's for sure. She won't lose all 400,000. In most months, a woman will only have one viable ova available for fertilization. And that's one of the reasons why single births are so common. About 97% of all births are single births. The man will ejaculate as many as 1 billion sperm in any one ejaculation, depending on his sperm count and the volume of his ejaculate. Really all depends on how long it's been since he had sex last as to how much that he will ejaculate. It's usually somewhere between 2 and 5 milliliters, which isn't very much. It's about a teaspoonful to a tablespoonful, maybe a little bit more than that. The reality is that males are constantly making sperm, so you can potentially a male could have sex with a viable female in the morning and have sex with a viable female in the evening and impregnate both of them because he will produce that many sperm during the day. It really there's a lot of different factors as to how many sperm a male is producing, but it can be up to 37 to 40,000 sperm per second, and if you multiply that out, it's a lot. I did that once, but I can't remember my figures. Anyway, I used to do this. This is one of my jobs as a medical laboratory technician. I used to do sperm counts, and that was really important. And I'll tell you in a minute as to why I did that. Hundreds of millions of sperm are produced in the testicles of most males every day. Each male ejaculation into the female vagina deposits hundreds of millions of sperm, maybe up to 1 billion. However, unless the woman is ovulating, the cervical opening is closed and won't allow the sperm to enter the uterus. Since the sperm cannot enter the uterus, they cannot find their way to the fallopian tube. When ovulation occurs, the mucoid plug that protects the cervix becomes more liquid, allowing the sperm to enter the uterus. And this is one of the reasons why that a woman can't be impregnated after she had sex with somebody 15 days ago and now she's ovulating. That's not going to work. It just doesn't happen that way. Fertilization is most likely to occur if intercourse takes place on the day of ovulation or the 5 days before ovulation. So that is your window, depending on how old or how young the individual is. A lot of times, the older you are, the smaller the window. The younger you are, the larger your window as it works. While most all births are of one child, sometimes women will give birth to two or even three infants. To have more than three infants is really quite a rare situation, unless, of course, she has taken fertility drugs. There are two ways a woman can have more than one child. Let me get a quick drink. I had a long conversation with my son. I'm a little bit dry. In two-thirds of all twin births, a woman will produce more than one ova, usually from each fallopian tube, and each ova is fertilized and forms a zygote. Another name for a fertilized ova is the zygote. These twins would be referred to as dizygotic twins because there's two zygotes, and would commonly be called fraternal twins because they're not the same. They're not identical half the time. Frequently, they're not even the same gender. Sometimes the single zygote will split and form two identical zygotes. These twins are referred to as monozygotic because they come from one zygote, mono meaning one, di meaning two, and they would commonly be referred to as identical twins because they're identical right down to their DNA. They have almost the same DNA, not quite, but almost the same DNA. Twin birth rates in the United States is about 3.3%. Among the white population, it's about 3.8%. The black population, 3.7%, and the Hispanic population, about 2.2%. Asians have the least; it's below 2%. Of all of the native groups, all the indigenous people of the Americas, the group that has the most twin births, strangely enough, are Alaska Natives, and their twin birth rate is right here, 3.8% to 3.7%. These are dizygotic twins. You can tell they're not the same. These are the famous Bush twins, George W. Bush. These are his daughters, and as you can see, they don't look anything alike. She looks more like him, and he looks more. Sorry. This is Jenna. Jenna looks more like George W. And I can't remember the other daughter's name, but she looks more like her mother. These are a set of twins that were born in Amsterdam, and I'll show you their parents in just a second. Obviously, dizygotic twins. Don't look alike, and you would even consider them of different races, but the reality is, here are their parents. And as you can see, probably both parents had a white ancestry somewhere, and so it just happened to come together in one of the fraternal twins. And there they are later on. Dad's gone, mom's still around, and as you can see, they still are the same age, certainly, but they don't look alike. Here's a famous set of twins from London, the Aylmer twins from London, and they're a little bit more famous than these. I'm not exactly sure how old these girls are now. There they are when they were little. There they are when they are a little bit older, and these are a different set of twins. Monozygotic twins, they look actually they look alike, and as you can see, both these sets of twins, you can barely tell them apart. It is estimated that between 8% and 17% of U.S. couples are unable to conceive, or they experience infertility. The most common cause of infertility in men is a low sperm count. Now, this is really kind of weird because I did sperm counts when I was in the service. And one of the reasons I was doing sperm counts is because I was I was in the Air Force, and pilots who pull a lot of G's would have problems impregnating their spouses. So if they wanted to get, one of the things that they did, if they wanted to impregnate their spouse, they would take them off of flight status for a couple months, and then potentially they could impregnate the individuals. But we were doing sperm counts on these guys to find out if that was really a problem. The problem was that their sperm counts were so low. And the answer was yes, their sperm counts were low. Now, one of the interesting things was that a lot of times these individuals produced female offspring instead of, and no male offspring. That was kind of one of the things that happened. And they discovered this when pilots started pulling more G's, when they started flying jet airplanes. All the rules that applied before kind of went out the window. So the more G's they pulled, the more it changed their sperm count, the more it changed which sperm were able to survive, I guess. Anyway, they produced a lot more female offspring than male offspring. A normal sperm count ranges from between 40 and 300 million sperm per mil of semen. When I was doing sperm counts back in the 70s and 80s, I rarely saw any that were less than 125 million per mil. Now, if you have anything over 40, they consider it good. Now, one of the things that we've noticed over the last 60 or 70 years, the sperm counts from the 40s and 50s were a lot higher than they are today, and we're not exactly sure why. One of the reasons could be, well, one of the things we're talking about is viable sperm, and one of the things that creates abnormal forms is smoking marijuana. Will give you abnormal forms, the sperm. And I don't think I'm not going to show you what a normal sperm looks like. Well, you saw what a normal sperm looks like back here. There you go. That's what a normal sperm looks like. It's got a tail. This is its power source, and this is the portion that actually impregnates, this portion right here. This is its power source. If it doesn't have one of these, then it can't swim. It doesn't have one of these, it can't swim. A lot of times this is small, or it's too big or too small. The head's too big or too small. Power pack's too small. The tail is bent so that it just swims around in circles. Lots of abnormal forms. And so one of the things we do know is that marijuana causes more abnormal forms than anything else. Oh, there we go. There's sperm. There you go. There's a power pack right there. That's the head and that's the tail. And you want them to be all straight. If they're not straight, then we got a problem. There we go. Okay, there's the abnormal sperm. Sometimes you get two heads. Sometimes you get no head at all. You just have a flagella. That flagella is the tail. Sometimes the power pack's too small. Lots of different reasons, and unfortunately, as a laboratory technician, I had to be able to identify all of these abnormal forms, and there was quite a problem. Well, wasn't nearly as much of a problem back then as there is today. Of course, the marijuana today is a lot stronger than it was back in when was I doing, the 70s and 80s. It's a lot stronger than it was back then, and a lot more people are smoking marijuana, so this may have something to do with the low sperm counts. Reproductive problems with women often include problems with producing or transporting ova. Abnormal ova can also be a cause. Excessively thick mucus covering the cervix may also be a problem. Problems with the health of the uterine wall will prevent implantation. For women over 30, the problem may be deterioration of the quality of the ova. However, the most common problem preventing women from becoming pregnant is blockage of the fallopian tube. Over half the time, it is due to sexually transmitted infections. Chlamydia can cause a blockage of the fallopian tube, as does gonorrhea. Chlamydia, we used to see chlamydia from time to time when I was working in the Air Force, and but we didn't really identify it as a problem. As long as they didn't have gonorrhea, we just called it nonspecific urethritis, and usually it was chlamydia. But now we recognize chlamydia as a problem. Um, I had a girlfriend once upon a time before I married my current wife. She couldn't get pregnant. She wanted to get pregnant, but she couldn't get pregnant. Finally, she had an operation called a histocypingiogram, where they went in through her belly button to see what was going on with her fallopian tubes. And what they discovered was that her fallopian tubes, she was born with her fallopian tubes adhesed, connected to her colon, which is a little bit is back too far, and it bent the fallopian tubes. So what they did, they straightened them out, and the next month she got pregnant. Um, I wasn't with her at that time. This was when she was. This is later. She got pregnant, and she had an ectopic pregnancy because there's too much of a kink in the fallopian tube. So now she only had one fallopian tube, uh, but eventually she was able to have a set of twins. But it was because her fallopian tubes were kinked. Heredity is transmitted through a substance known as deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. An individual's DNA is a combination of their mother's genes and their father's genes. DNA is made of combinations of 4 amino acids: adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. You probably know all this from your biology class in high school. I apologize for duplicating that information. An individual's genetic code is a series of 3 billion pairs of these 4 amino acids. The largest unit of hereditary structure is the chromosome. There are 23 pairs of chromosomes, a set of 23 from the sperm and a set of 23 from the ova, for a total of 46 chromosomes. So we have 46 chromosomes, and if you count all those chromosomes up there, there should be 46 of them. Chromosomes are constructed of genes, about 30,000 in each cell. One cell will contain a full strand of DNA, so each gene will be a segment of DNA. And there you go. And as it happens, this is the gender gene. This tells you whether you're going to be a male or a female. This is a little boy because he has a Y chromosome, and that's his X chromosome. As you can see, the Y chromosome is much smaller than the X chromosome, and this causes all kinds of interesting problems for little boys that don't happen to little girls. 99.9% of the genes in any human's body are identical to all other humans, which means that no matter how dark your skin is, no matter how crinkled your hair is, you and I have exactly the same 99.9% of the same genetic structure. These genes are known as monomorphic genes, one structure. 0.1% are different for each individual, and this is one of the reasons why when we do DNA studies and we're trying to identify somebody by their DNA, we don't have to look at all their DNA because 99.9% of it's identical. We just have to look at 0.1% in order to identify the individual, to find out who that individual is. It's kind of interesting. Each racial group has their own genetic structure. It's kind of fascinating if you look at it. We can tell a lot of different things from your genes. If we can find them, we have to find them first, of course. I'm thinking of a murder scene, but we don't have to think about a murder scene if you don't want to. These genes are known as polymorphic genes or mini structures, and that's a 0.1%. Now you understand why it's not that difficult to do gene studies on humans, because we can just throw out the 99.9%. That is very similar. The interesting thing is, if you take a chimpanzee and you draw blood from a chimpanzee, you draw blood from a human, and we look at their DNA, 98% of the DNA is identical to the chimpanzee. So they are our closest primate relatives. The chromosome that determines if an infant is going to be a male or a female is the 23rd chromosome, or the sex chromosome. All cells in the body carry 46 chromosomes except the individual's ova or sperm. Each ova and sperm have 23 chromosomes, and when they get together, they deliver half their genetic material from the father and half from the mother. All ova are female or carry an X chromosome, so it's not the mother that determines the sex of the child, it is the father. It's always the father. The male determines whether the offspring will be male or female. When a male, he has a Y chromosome, or a female, X chromosome or X sperm. Each sperm is different. The female sperm tend to be lighter and faster, and the male chromosome tends, or the male sperm tends to be slower, bigger and slower. And it really all depends on which one wins the race to the ova. Most sperm, about 70% of all sperm are male. Why in the world is that true? Because it's necessary. Well, there needs to be males out there, otherwise the species dies. So males are important. Females are probably more important because they are the ones that carry the children, but it's important to have males also. Now, if we look at these sex chromosomes, let me, yeah, okay, well, we'll talk about that in a second. The male and female chromosomes are actually shaped like an X and a Y, and because of this, several abnormal genes found on the X chromosome will not be canceled out by the genes on the missing arm of the Y chromosome. These are known as sex-linked diseases, and they include hemophilia, colorblindness, and male pattern baldness. Now, one of the reasons you don't see a lot of bald-headed women is because if you put two X chromosomes together, it probably cancels out the male pattern baldness. The reason that women see colors better than men is because if you put two X chromosomes together, it probably cancels out the color blindness. And the same thing for hemophilia. Very rarely do we see hemophilia in a female. And these are known as sex-linked diseases. So if we look at these two, you can see that there's a big chunk of this chromosome that will not be canceled out. So if she has a problem on this part of her chromosome, then the Y chromosome is not going to take care of it. All right. And there we go, some X and Y chromosomes, but of course this one's much larger than this one is. And there we go. We have the tiny little Y chromosome and we have the giant X chromosome. And if there is a problem on this one, then we definitely have a problem. Dominant and recessive inheritance. You might be surprised with some of these. Dominant is to have dark hair. Blonde hair is a recessive trait. Dominant is normal hair. Pattern baldness is recessive. That may be why there aren't more males out there who are bald-headed. But you might say, wait a minute, a lot of people don't have any hair. Michael Jordan doesn't have any hair, cut his hair. And Charles Barkley's bald-headed. What's going on here? Well, I'll tell you, if you potentially if you use steroids, one of the reasons we have a lot of athletes who are bald, especially athletes from the 50s, 60s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, is because they took steroids, and steroids make you bald, makes your hair go away. Anyway, Pattern baldness is a recessive trait. Curly hair is a dominant trait. Straight hair is a recessive trait. Non-red hair is dominant. Red hair is recessive. Widow's peak hairline, and I could show you what that looks like if I could turn on my camera, but I won't. So most indigenous people have a round hairline that is recessive, but the dominant is the widow's peak hairline, which is what you see in a lot of Europeans. Facial dimples are dominant, no dimples are recessive. Normal hearing is dominant, thank goodness. Some form of deafness is recessive. Normal vision is dominant, and nearsightedness is recessive. Farsightedness is dominant, strangely enough, and normal vision is recessive. Normal vision is dominant as compared to genital eye cataracts. A lot of people develop cataracts as they get older. Here I am, 72 years old. I don't think I have cataracts, but my wife's dad had cataracts. Normal color vision is dominant, and red-green blindness is recessive, thank goodness. Pigmented skin is dominant. You very rarely see anybody who doesn't have pigmented skin. Albinism is recessive. Albinism is where they don't have any melanin in their skin. Double jointedness is dominant over normal joints. Broad lips are dominant over thin lips. An arched Roman nose is dominant over a straight nose. Extra fingers and toes, strangely enough, are dominant over normal 5 fingers and toes. Short fingers and toes are dominant over normal length fingers. Immunity to poison ivy is dominant over being sensitive to poison ivy. This is really kind of strange because we have discovered something with COVID. Type A blood is dominant, whereas type O blood is recessive. Yet, most Europeans have type O blood. Type B blood is dominant over type O blood. Rh positive blood, thank goodness, is dominant over Rh negative blood. Now, one of the things that we've discovered from COVID is that people who have type A blood and type B blood, this is an antigen, and that causes them to overreact to an infection. Type O blood doesn't have this. So people that developed COVID, who contracted COVID and had type A or type B blood, were more likely to end up in the hospital on a ventilator than people with type O blood. Now, we've always known that, well, we've known this for quite a while. It didn't really take COVID. But COVID was the first time we ever talked about it, that type A blood and type B blood were caused an overreaction to infection. We've known this for a while, but we didn't want to say anything. And medicine didn't want to say anything because it seemed to stigmatize people who were minorities, because more minorities are type A and type B than type O for some reason. I'm not a racist. This doesn't have anything to do with race. This has to do with who's going to get sick and who's going to have an overreaction to something. So if somebody with type O caught a cold, they'd probably last for 5 to 7 days. Somebody with type A blood caught a cold, probably last 7 to 10 days because they overreact. Their immune system overreacts to infection. Here we go. See, there we go. Type O positive, 37% of Caucasians are type O positive. 47% of African Americans are type O positive. Hispanics, 53% are type O positive, and Asians, 39%. O negative, 8% of Caucasians are O negative, and as you can see, much smaller percentages of African Americans. But here we go with type A. 33% of Caucasians are type A, 24% of African Americans, 29% of Hispanics, and 27% of Asians, type A negative, type B positive. Oh, there you go. African Americans, 18% are B. And this is one of the reasons why, if you remember when COVID first hit New York, it seemed like the only people that were getting sick and being hospitalized were African Americans. And this is one of the reasons right here. So what percentage? So that's what, 42% of their blood, 42, 44, 45, 45% of African Americans are either A or B, have A or B blood, whereas 49, 51, 51%. I don't know. Anyway, a lot of Caucasians have type O blood. I have type O blood, and I'm Caucasian. Each parent contributes half the genetic material, and each will match up to determine hair color, eye color, etc. Each parent contributes half the material to each characteristic. Thus, for each characteristic, an individual will receive 2 alleles. When both parents contribute the same allele, such as 2 blue-eyed alleles, the characteristic is said to be homozygous. Now, the reality is that since blue eyes are recessive, in order for somebody to have blue eyes, they have to be homozygous blue, have homozygous. They have to have blue eyes from both the mother and the father. Now, interestingly, and I guess this is a problem, this is really interesting to me because I have blue eyes, but my dad had blue eyes and my mother had brown eyes. So she couldn't possibly have been homozygous brown because then she would only have contributed brown-eyed alleles. If the 2 characteristics are different, then they are said to be heterozygous. My mother had to be heterozygous. She had to have a blue eye allele, otherwise she couldn't have contributed a blue eye allele to her offspring. And half of my brothers and sisters have blue eyes, and half of my brothers and sisters have brown eyes. Now, I have 2 children. I have blue eyes, obviously. My wife that I reproduced with had brown eyes, and both of my children have brown eyes. Now it's possible that the luck of the draw, just she was heterozygous, and she just never contributed a blue eye allele. But probably she was homozygous brown. So both of my kids have blue eyes. Both of my kids have brown eyes. Now, I know that my daughter, I know my daughter's heterozygous because she has an allele from me and she has an allele from her mother and she has brown eyes. My daughter has brown eyes, but her son has blue eyes. So she's obviously heterozygous. She has heterozygous eyes. She has one blue eye allele and one brown eye allele. When looking at genetic structures, it is easy to see which traits are dominant. The observable traits that are created from dominant inheritance is known as an individual's phenotype. The hidden, possibly recessive matching structure is known as the genotype. So the genotype is hidden. So with my daughter, since she has brown eyes, her phenotype is brown eyes because she has brown eyes. That's her observable trait. But her hidden trait is blue eyes because she has a blue-eyed baby. So her genotype is blue eyes. But we have to do this with everything. We can't. We're not just talking about eye color or skin color. We're talking about every aspect of your being. Now this becomes really important when we are cross-matching blood because we can see what type of blood you have, but you may have a hidden genotype that can potentially cause problems. So this becomes really, really important when we're cross-matching blood or we're transplanting organs. We need there, and this is one of the reasons why they talk about looking at a lot of different people to find organ donors, because the reality is that if I donated a kidney to somebody, they would have to match up perfectly with my genetic structure. Otherwise, he's going to reject that organ. And this is one of the reasons why we talk about phenotypes and genotypes. The thousands of genes and billions of combinations of amino acids that must go together, it may seem surprising that any normal children are born at all. But the reality is that any genetic flaw or outrageous abnormality that will not sustain life usually terminates long before the infant is due, usually within the first trimester. And this is one of the reasons why, if someone has a problem, then they will probably miscarry in the first trimester. This probably means that there was something wrong. However, there are some instances of sex-linked inheritances and mutations that produce offspring that may have some serious problems that will eventually lead to death. Antitrypsin deficiency causes liver problems. As a laboratory technician, I had to look for all of these things. Alpha thalassemia, severe anemia causing infant death. Beta thalassemia, severe anemia causing teen death. Cystic fibrosis, too much mucus, causing problems. Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is a male degenerative disease. Hemophilia is a male bleeding problem. Anencephaly, lacking all brain tissue, causes infant death, of course. Spina bifida is incompletely closed spinal column, which causes all kinds of interesting problems, a leakage of cerebrospinal fluid. Phenylketonuria is a digestion problem. Uh, uh, these individuals, people with PKU, will, because they can't get rid of the urea, this is a waste product, it destroys brain tissue, and that causes a intellectual disability. Polycystic kidney disease, serious kidney problems causing death. Sickle cell anemia, you probably heard of. It deforms the red blood cells in Africans. Um, there's another reason for that. It actually keeps them from catching malaria. Tay-Sachs disease is a degenerative disease of nerve cells in Ashkenazi Jews. Now, who are the Ashkenazi Jews? Once upon a time, the Jewish people lived in Israel, and several thousand years ago, they were kicked out of Israel, and they were forced to move to Egypt. Once they left Egypt, they kind of split in half, and half of them went into Spain. Those became the Sephardic Jews, and the rest of them went into Eastern Europe, and those became the Ashkenazi Jews. So, despite the fact that they came from the same place originally, they split at one point, and some went into Spain, and the others went into Eastern Europe, and they became different. Of course, they only were able to reproduce with the people in their area, and so the Ashkenazi Jews developed this Tay-Sachs disease. Someone with Tay-Sachs disease rarely survives past their second year. 1 out of every 12 African Americans carries the sickle cell anemia trait. 7 out of every 10 African Americans, 70%, will have a milk intolerance, lactose intolerance as adults. So they can't eat ice cream, they can't drink milk as adults. 7 out of 10. 1 out of every 10 African American males has a hereditary predisposition to develop hemolytic anemia after taking sulfa or other drugs. We discovered this in Korea during the war, and what we discovered was that we can't give sulfa drugs to African Americans, and so we had to use another antibiotic. Luckily, we had penicillin at the time, so we could give them penicillin. Hopefully, that would work. But what we discovered was that we were if we gave it to everybody, sulfa drugs, then we're killing some of them due to anemia. So we discovered this. Now you wonder, why didn't they discover it in World War II? And the answer is because, well, for one thing, they didn't have sulfa drugs in World War II, and the army was segregated during World War II, but by the Korean War it was integrated. And so we had more African Americans in combat. 1 out of every 50 African American females has a hereditary predisposition to develop hemolytic anemia after taking sulfa or other drugs. 1 in 25 whites are carriers of the gene for cystic fibrosis. 1 in 80 whites are carriers of phenylketonuria or PKU. Now, you really don't have to worry about PKU as long as she's got it and he doesn't, because he will probably, his gene will probably cancel it out. But if both of them have the PKU mutation, then they will develop offspring with PKU. 1 in every 100 Ashkenazi Jews are carriers of Tay-Sachs disease, also known as familial dysautonomia. 1 out of every 10 Italian Americans and Greek Americans will carry genes for beta thalassemia. This is something that you can carry into adulthood. Your blood is too thick, and you'll have to have your blood will become too thick. You're producing too many red cells. So from time to time, you have to draw a unit of blood from these individuals because they have too many red cells. 1 in 45 Armenian and Sephardic Jewish individuals are carriers of familial Mediterranean fever, Cooley's anemia. It was really kind of interesting. When I was in the service, we ran into an individual who was Armenian, and he had Cooley's anemia. He was a pilot, and it's an anemia. You can't fly with it. I already explained to you who the Sephardic Jews are. They are the Jewish population that moved into Spain. And from Spain, they were actually kicked out of Spain, and then they kind of went into Europe, and some of them went into North Africa. Anyway, they are the Sephardic Jews. Afrikaners, or white South Africans of Dutch and English extraction, have a 1 in 330 chance to have porphyria. Porphyria is a genetic abnormality where the individual is unable to process oxygen from the red blood cell in select organs or organ areas, specifically their skin and their nervous system, and of course those areas will break down. Almost 100% of Asians are unable to digest milk as adults, and this is of course lactose intolerance. Almost 100% of American Indians are unable to digest milk as adults. They have lactose intolerance. In most cases where there is an extra chromosome, the zygote would not survive due to severe abnormalities. However, when there is an extra chromosome, a sex chromosome, or even a missing one, the individual will develop but have select sexual problems. XYY, the male, they develop as a tall male with a slightly lower IQ and a poor verbal skill, and they are XYY, or hypermale. XXX, they develop as a female. They have menstrual irregularities and intellectual deficits. XXY is known as Klinefelter's syndrome. They develop as a sterile male. They have few sexual characteristics, and they have learning problems. XO is known as Turner syndrome. They are short, sterile females with incomplete development. Fragile X, broken arm on the X chromosome causes intellectual deficits that are more severe in males than in females. And that would be because they don't have another X chromosome to balance out that fragile X, or that almost broken part of the chromosome. 3 other chromosomes of the 23 pairs can have an extra chromosome or trisomy. The most common cause of extra chromosomes is trisomy 21, better known as Down syndrome. In Down syndrome, the individual may have mild to severe intellectual disability with various organ and physical malformations. The second most common trisomy is trisomy 13. In trisomy 13, the infant is born with multiple nervous system, organ, and facial malformations. 72% will die before their first year of life. Trisomy 18 is less common, but also results in more terminated pregnancies due to fetal death. In trisomy 18, the infant is born with severe nervous system, organ, and facial malformations. 90% will die before they reach the age of 1 year. Researchers are discovering a great deal of information by studying groups of monozygotic twins. Interestingly, even when the twins come from the same zygote, in 1/3 of the cases, each embryo will create its own chorionic sac. By comparing these twins with dizygotic twins and monozygotic twins that were separated at birth, researchers are getting a new understanding of the impact of the environment on the human personality. Neither heredity nor the environment work separately to come up with a final human product. The reaction range of an individual is a combination of the environmental factors and hereditary trait to come up with a final human product. For example, when discussing height, an individual may have a height reaction range between 6 feet and 7 feet. With optimum food and exercise, a child may reach a height of 7 feet. Without it, he will end up somewhere in between. However, there are some hereditary traits that can rarely be changed by environment, like eye color. This is known as canalization. Genotype-environment interaction. Genotype-environment interaction refers to the interaction between the same environment on individuals with different genetic makeup. The classic example is looking at allergens in an area and seeing which children become allergic to them. It also refers to individuals with similar genetic makeup growing up in different environments. The classic example is the child who has trouble in one family environment but thrives in another. And I think this is a movie. There we go. Oh, great. We're going to see a commercial.
Here's your tea, Mother.
Oolong?
Yes.
Loose, not bagged?
Yes.
Steeped 3 minutes?
Yes.
2% milk?
Yes.
Warmed separately?
Yes.
1 teaspoon sugar?
Yes.
Raw sugar?
Yes.
It's cold.
I'll start again.
I have the same problem with him. My theory is that his lack of focus stems from an overdeveloped sex drive.
Oh, I don't know where he would have gotten that. Aside from a pro forma consummation of our marriage, his father and I only had intercourse for the purposes of reproduction.
That seems a fairly efficient arrangement.
Yes, we think so. We've both done papers on it. Mine from a neuroscientific point of view and his from an anthropological. Mine, of course, was the only one worth reading.
Of course. I would very much like to read about your sex life.
Well, it's all online, or you can order it from the Princeton University Press.
Here's your tea, Mother. So, what are you guys talking about?
The frequency with which your parents had intercourse.
Swell. If you're lucky, maybe she'll show you the PowerPoint presentation.
I'm sorry, it's on my other laptop.
So, Mother, what's new?
You'll have to be more specific.
All right, what's new with you?
Oh, well, I've been having some fascinating menopausal symptoms recently.
Maybe something less personal.
Oh, your Uncle Floyd died.
Oh my God, what happened?
His heart stopped beating. I have to urinate.
What a remarkable woman.
Yeah, I thought you guys might hit it off.
I envy you your childhood.
I hate to tell you, but the only warm memories I have of my childhood are of my Uncle Floyd.
But you're clearly misremembering. Your mother is brilliant, analytical, insightful, and I'm betting she never hit you with a Bible because you wouldn't eat your Brussels sprouts.
Sheldon, you don't give your mother enough credit. She's warm, she's loving, she doesn't glue electrodes to your head to measure your brainwaves while potty training.
You were lucky. Yeah, when I was a kid, if I wanted an EEG, I had to attach my own electrodes.
Oops.
Text.
Okay. Genotype environment correlation, when the environment reinforces genetic differences because they work in the same direction, it is known as a genotype environment correlation. There are ways that this can happen. Passive correlations, parents that have the traits give the traits to their children also tend to maintain an environment that encourages the development of that trait. Music, parents are musical, so they have a musical home. They have a piano in the house, violins. They have all the instruments, and of course, if the children get the same traits, then they will be able to pick that up. Reaction or evocative correlations. Children with different traits will get different reactions from their parents. If you have a parent that is a basketball player and their child shows interest in basketball, then they of course will try to help them become a basketball player. Whereas the child that if you have a father that is a basketball player and the child is more interested in the violin, he will not, of course, they will have different reactions to that child. He will have different reactions to the violin player than he will to the basketball player. Active correlations: as children get older and are allowed to select their own activities, they will gravitate toward activities that they have a genetic proclivity to perform well. Not surprisingly, children who grow up in the same family often have very different personalities, IQs, and interests. This is due to the fact that children born at different times in families cannot have the same experiences. This is known as non-shared environmental effects. These include the differences between boys and girls. Boys and girls tended to not be raised the same, especially when I was young. Boys wore pants and girls didn't. They wore skirts or dresses, so they weren't raised the same. Composition of the family: the more people in the family, of course, the different everything was. All my neighbors, all the people around us had 3 children. Each of them had 3 children. It was really kind of interesting. And my family had 6 children. So the probability that there would be enough money for all 6 of us wasn't very high. Whereas if you divide family income by 3 children, of course, it's much easier to send all 3 of those kids to college than it was to send all 6 of us to college. The historical impact of what is going on in a family, and you know, history has a lot to do with what's going on. My parents had 4 children, 4 boys. All 4 of us were in the military during Vietnam. So you know, that's something. If you, I don't think my mother meant to produce soldiers. That's not why she had babies. But of course, the Vietnam War was going on, and we were of age, so we were all 4 in the military. My 3 brothers were in the Army, and I was in the Air Force. Geneticists feel that similarities between siblings is probably due to genes, while differences are due to non-shared environmental effects. And of course, my brothers and sisters are very much different than I am. And the differences are probably because I grew up when I did. I grew up the way I grew up differently than they did. I was number 4 out of 6. But, you know, our similarities, the fact that we were all had fairly high IQs, I guess that was probably genetics. Physical attributes, height, weight, intelligence, general intelligence, and specific abilities are influenced by genes. Enriched or impoverished environments will make or break a proclivity, but native intelligence levels tend to be closer to biological parents than adoptive parents. My mother was a firm believer in drinking milk. We had lots and lots of milk in our house. And we all had strong bones. I've broken my arm once. I've broken each arm once, I think. Yeah, I broke each arm once. But other than that, I've been pretty lucky. And it may be because my mother made us drink so much milk. Okay. No pop in my house. Personality, studies of 5 major groupings of personality traits shows that there is heritability of about 40%. Extroversion, neuroticism, being overly anxious, conscientiousness, agreeableness, openness to experience. Select studies have shown that other personality traits may be influenced more by heredity than by environment, your temperament, your activity, your sociability, your emotionality, your shyness, and its antithesis, your boldness, may have something to do with heredity. I teach, my daughter teaches, my son used to teach, now he's working in security. He's in one of the national security agencies. But we all are fairly, well, we're all teachers. So we're all a little bit outgoing. However, if we took a test to find out if we were extroverted or introverted, you would discover that we were all 3 introverted. Psychopathology, there seems to be a strong genetic influence on at least 2 forms of psychopathology. Schizophrenia, the loss of contact with reality marked by episodes of delusions and hallucinations. The risk of developing schizophrenia is 10 times greater among siblings and offspring of people suffering from schizophrenia than in the general population, with an estimated genetic contribution between 63% and 85%. So if you have schizophrenia in your family, which I do not, well, I have a niece with schizophrenia, but I think she got that from her mother. No, we keep saying that anyway. If you have schizophrenia in your family, then there's a great possibility that that it's going to be somewhere else in your family. Autism is a disorder marked by an inability to have normal social interaction. The individual has impaired communication and imagination. Children suffering from autism often develop obsessive, ritualized routines and may display repetitive movements that can be destructive to the individual. And these are the 2 psychopathologies, schizophrenia and autism, that are hereditary. Gestation for humans averages about 266 days, or about 9 months. Gestation is the length of time from fertilization to the emergence of the offspring from the womb. Parental development takes place in 3 stages. In the germinal stage, the growing structure is called a zygote. The next stage is the embryonic stage, and the growing structure becomes an embryo. The stage before birth is the fetal stage, and the growing structure becomes a fetus. As the human grows from a zygote to a child, they develop in 2 directions. They develop cephalocaudally from the head down, and proximodistally from near to far. So the center of the body grows first, and then the extremities grow. And there you go, proximodistal and cephalocaudal. The germinal stage lasts from fertilization to about 2 weeks. The structure is known as a zygote. At the 36-hour mark, the zygote begins rapid cell division through mitosis. By the 72nd hour mark, 3 days, the zygote is 16 to 32 cells. At this point, the zygote is making its way down the fallopian tube to the uterus. By the 4th day, hopefully the zygote is floating free in the uterus. If the zygote gets stuck in the fallopian tube, it will grow until it is too big for the fallopian tube, and it will cause the fallopian tube to rupture. This condition is known as an ectopic pregnancy. It's very painful, and it causes a great deal of bleeding. Select cells will develop in the structures that will protect and feed the developing embryo. The placenta is a protective sac. The umbilical cord through which the embryo will be delivered oxygen and nourishment. The amniotic sac is the fluid-filled membrane that protects the developing fetus. The chorion is the outer membrane of the amniotic sac, and we talked about that when we were talking about monozygotic twins. They will form two chorions. Trophoblasts, outer layer of the blastocyst, about 2/3 of them form separate chorions, so they won't be in there together in the same sac. The trophoblast is the outer layer of the blastocyst that produces thread-like structures that penetrate the lining of the uterine wall, attaching and allowing it to tie into the mother's circulatory system. And that's the way it looks. There's a placenta. The fetus, of course, is the baby. The amniotic sac, the uterine wall, the vagina, cervix, uterus, and the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is where it gets its food and oxygen. There it is developing. That's the blastocyst. It is estimated that only 10 to 20% of fertilized eggs ever implant on the uterine wall. This task must take place before the 8 to 10th day of gestation, or the zygote's chances for survival decline very rapidly. The embryonic stage runs from the 2 to 8 week gestation period. During this stage, the developing child becomes an embryo. The organs and the major body systems develop rapidly during this period. The embryo is quite vulnerable to destructive influences. The nervous system develops between the 2nd and the 5th week. The heart develops between the 3.5 to 6.5 week mark. The arms develop between the 4.5 to 8 week mark. Eyes develop between the 4.5 to 8.5 week mark. The legs develop between the 4.5 to 8 week mark. The teeth develop between the 7th and the 9th week. The palate develops between the 7th and the 11th week. External genitalia develop between the 7.5 and 11th week. That's between the 2nd month of pregnancy and the 3rd month. Ears develop between the 4.5 and 9.5 week mark. Unless an embryo is perfect, it will probably not survive the first trimester. If this is the case, an embryo will be spontaneously aborted or miscarried. Between 50 and 70% of miscarriages are due to chromosomal abnormalities. More miscarriages occur to male embryos than female embryos. Remember, about 70% of all sperm are male. They have estimated, oh, there it is. Conception, 56% of all conceptions are male, but only 51% of all births are male. This is because the male is more fragile than the female, and this may be because of the difference between the X and Y chromosomes. You put two X chromosomes together, it's more likely to produce a viable offspring that will survive. At the 8th week, or some female babies are hardier, tend to be hardier. They're smaller, but they're hardier than male babies. And you can see it from all of this, well, from these statistics, losing a fairly large percentage of the male conceived offspring. At the 8th week or 2 months mark, the developing child passes into the fetal stage and becomes a fetus. This stage is marked by first development of bone cells. During the fetal stage, the growth rate of the fetus accelerates rapidly. The fetus marks the beginning of movement or quickening. Movement and fetal growth are normally monitored through ultrasounds. Males will differentiate themselves as early as in the 8th week, as they will be more active than females. As weird as this sounds, and this will last just about all the male's life. Really kind of interesting. My mother, my mother was a nurse, and she got pregnant. She got pregnant. My dad was headed overseas for World War II, and she got pregnant, and she carried my sister, her first pregnancy. She carried my sister for 9 months, of course. But she thought she wasn't exactly sure that my sister was alive in there because she never moved. She was just not moving at all. So my mother thought maybe she was still would be stillborn, but she was born, and all of her life, my sister didn't move a whole lot. She was kind of lazy, did a lot of reading, didn't do a lot of exercise. But then when of course her next child was a male, and he moved a lot more than my sister did. And then her next child was a female, and she moved kind of a lot. Then I came along, and she hated me. While she was pregnant because I moved around so much. And of all my brothers, I still move around more than anybody else does. And my mother didn't like me much when I was a kid. And that was probably because I moved way more than she wanted me to. Anyway, we made up later in life because I went into medicine just like she did, and she kind of liked that. Anyway, okay, I moved a lot. My oldest sister didn't because she was lazy and I wasn't. I became a track star. I'm still an athlete at 72. Um, this is a little girl at 30 weeks. She's asleep. There's a little girl between 8 and 13 weeks. Beginning at about the 12th week, a fetus will begin swallowing its own amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid is the waste products of the fetus. The swallowing stimulates the fetus's sense of smell and taste. By the 14th week, mature taste cells have appeared. If the mother has ingested a food or flavoring that crosses a placental barrier, the fetus will be tasting it over and over again. And this is what happens with spices. This is what happens with a lot of foods. So the baby will develop a taste for these foods. So if they're Italian and they eat a lot of oregano, if the mother eats a lot of oregano, eats a lot of garlic, then the baby will develop a taste for oregano and garlic. Uh, and of course there's cayenne pepper. There's all kinds of foods, curries in India. So a lot of these foods the child will develop a taste for. Now, strangely enough, alcohol will cross the placental barrier, and the baby will be drinking alcohol because it gets into the amniotic fluid, so it'll be developing alcohol. If you're one of those people, the first time you tasted alcohol, you thought, "Oh, that tastes really good. I like that stuff." Then possibly it's because this is maybe one of the reasons why. First time I tasted alcohol, I thought it tasted horrible, but my mother wasn't a drinker, so that may have had something to do with it. Um, anyway, so look at that, the baby's growing. Okay. Okay, we watched the baby grow this time. Watch the mother's breasts this time. As you can see, it's getting bigger. The nipple got larger about the 5th month. There we go. Watch it again. There you go. You can see how the mother changes as well. Not just the stomach, but the breast. And one last time. What's the baby growing? There he goes. Flipped over. He's in the right position for birth. There we go. 9 months. He's in the right position. Good. Study of chemicals or substances that might affect a developing child is very complex. If the mother is exposed to a chemical or substance during critical period of development, when a select organ is being formed, the dangerous chemical or teratogen may cause irreparable damage. Any other time exposure will do little or no harm. And this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why we tell people to stay away from all strange chemicals, not to take any drugs, not to drink any alcohol, not to smoke any cigarettes. All of these things are toxins. Potentially, they're toxins and will interfere with the baby. One of the most critical aspects of pregnancy is the need to increase calorie intake, especially protein. It is estimated that women need to increase calorie intake by 300 to 500 calories a day. Women who gain between 22 and 46 pounds during pregnancy are less likely to miscarry or have low birth weight babies. Research shows that malnutrition during fetal growth can have a lasting effect on the offspring. A Dutch study showed the prenatal nutritional deficiency in the second and third trimester resulted in increased antisocial personality disorder. The placenta tends to protect the developing fetus from select poisons that the mother might ingest or come in contact with. However, there are some chemicals and medications that do cross the placental barrier. Tetracycline is an antibiotic. It crosses the placental barrier and can cause deafness, I think. Accutane is an antibiotic for severe acne. It's actually a heavy dosage of tetracycline. Barbiturates will cross the placental barrier. Opiates will cross the placental barrier. Central nervous system depressants, non-steroidal and anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin can potentially cause problems. And certainly the woman shouldn't be taking hormones during a pregnancy. Drugs that cross the placental barrier, diazepam, which is Valium, when taken during the last trimester, causes irritability and exaggerated reflexes in the baby. Chloramphenicol is an antibiotic. It causes gray baby syndrome, where the baby doesn't breathe very well. Cipro or Naroxen can cause joint abnormalities. Cipro, of course, is an antibiotic. Kanamycin, another antibiotic, can cause deafness. Macrodantin, which is another antibiotic, can cause anemia. Streptomycin can cause deafness. Streptomycin, of course, is another antibiotic. Sulfonamides, another antibiotic taken late in pregnancy, can cause jaundice. Coumadin is a blood thinner for people with a clotting problem. It can cause bleeding problems in the baby. Carbamazepine, phenobarbital, and phenytoin, these are all anti-seizure medicines. They can cause birth defects. Carbamazepine, phenobarbital, and phenytoin can be given not only to somebody who has epilepsy, but also to somebody who has bipolar disorder. So they have to go off these drugs during pregnancy. ACE inhibitors are given to you for low blood pressure or for high blood pressure. Late in pregnancy can cause kidney damage to fetuses. Beta blockers, once again, is a blood pressure medicine. Can slow growth due to low heart rate and sugar. Lithium is a heavy metal that is given to people that are suffering from bipolar disorder. Can cause heart defects. Aspirin, ibuprofen, naproxen can cause delayed labor, bleeding problems, heart problems, or jaundice. These are NSAIDs. These are analgesics, aspirin, ibuprofen, and naproxen. Chlorpropamide and tolbutamide have to do with diabetes, and they can cause low blood sugar and birth defects. Yes. Physicians have discovered the effects of some drugs produce some fairly tragic results. Thalidomide was a drug given to women around the world in the 1950s to alleviate the symptoms of morning sickness, and it caused stunted and missing limbs, severe facial deformities, defective organs. It only affected about 12,000 babies around the world, but as you can see, let me get out of here for a quick second. I don't have an arrow, and this is bugging me. Okay, she has stunted arms. She doesn't have any arms at all. These are two thalidomide babies. Another surprise to physicians was the synthetic hormone diethylstilbestrol, or DES. It was introduced in the late 40s and early 50s to prevent miscarriages. Unfortunately, as the daughters of mothers who took DES reached puberty, some developed rare forms of vaginal and cervical cancer. Some had a hard time maintaining their pregnancies. Some sons of DES mothers developed testicular cancer, and some were sterile. My mother-in-law took DES when she was pregnant with her children. Since the 1980s, physicians have realized that women who consume alcohol throughout their pregnancy risk causing serious damage to the unborn infant. 1 out of every 750 infants born in the United States are born with fetal alcohol syndrome, and this is what it looks like. Alcohol affects the fetal brain, changing the structure of the corpus callosum, which affects voluntary movement and higher order processing. 1 in every 75 births is born to a woman who drank moderately, a condition known as fetal alcohol effect. Fetal alcohol effect causes retarded growth, mild intellectual deficits, delayed emotional development. FAS causes slow prenatal, postnatal growth, facial and bodily malformations, disorders of central nervous system, poor sucking response, brainwave abnormalities, sleep disturbances, slow information processing, short attention span, restlessness, irritability, hyperactivity, learning disability, retarded growth, and motor impairments. This is the first baby diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome. And that's the reason he has that horrible scar in the middle of his chest, is because he had to have open heart surgery. If he looks native to you, it is because he is. The first babies identified with fetal alcohol syndrome were on the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. These are individuals with fetal alcohol syndrome. As you can see, it causes facial malformations and more. These are the same people from a different angle. When we say it reduces the corpus callosum, this is what your corpus callosum is supposed to look like. This is a normal corpus callosum. This is a baby with fetal alcohol syndrome, and this one doesn't have a corpus callosum at all. The trend in the last 20 years is for men and women to wait longer to marry and for women to delay reproduction until they are in their 30s. Recent research has disclosed that women who do not begin reproduction before the age of 28 are in a greater danger of having chromosomal damage to their ova and greater complications during pregnancy. The possibility of Down syndrome increases markedly with age and is especially prevalent in women over 40. My daughter is a biologist. She got pregnant at 42. She had her baby at 43. Of course, both of us have all this information. I worked in medicine for 30 years, and she was a biologist. So she was calling me every week with a breakdown of what was going on. They tried to make sure that my grandson didn't have Down syndrome. We breathed a sigh of relief after he reached that she reached the 22nd week, because we knew that she was going to be able to give birth to him. Came out perfect. He's just a wonderful child. Does not have Down syndrome. We were very lucky. To ensure that the fetus gets adequate vitamins, or that the fetus doesn't deplete the mother's stores, the mother should supplement her diet with a multivitamin. 3 items that are essential to good fetal health are iodine, zinc, and the B vitamin folic acid, or B9. Iodine is necessary, it prevents cretinism and thyroid problems. Zinc promotes cranial growth and proper weight gain. Folic acid, especially in the first days of fetal development, prevents neural tube defects such as anencephaly and spina bifida. So the reality is that the woman needs to be on, have a good diet, have a well-balanced diet before she gets pregnant, especially folic acid. Obese women have a higher risk of giving birth to babies with neural tube defects. They also tend to have greater complications during pregnancy, including miscarriage, stillbirth, and neonatal death during the first month of life. Underweight women are more likely to have dangerously small babies. Moderate exercise does not seem to endanger the fetuses of healthy women. In fact, regular exercise can prevent constipation and improve respiration, circulation, muscle tone, and skin elasticity, which will make for an easier delivery and quicker recovery postpartum. It is estimated that nicotine use by pregnant women causes 115,000 miscarriages every year in the United States. Nicotine has been identified as a contributing factor in 5,600 infant deaths a year. 53,000 babies are born underweight every year due to nicotine consumption by the mother during pregnancy. Infants of mothers who smoke have higher incidences of respiratory problems, including more colds and asthma. Evidence seems to indicate that smoking during pregnancy may cause poor attention span for the child, hyperactivity, anxiety, learning and behavior problems, perceptual, motor, and linguistic problems, low IQ scores, low grade placement, neurological problems. There is no definitive research to indicate that caffeine causes low birth weight, premature birth, retarded fetal growth, or miscarriage. However, moderate to heavy use, 4 or more cups of coffee a day, may increase the risk of sudden infant death and possibly spontaneous abortion. Marijuana has been shown to cause ovulation abnormalities in women and lower testosterone and sperm counts in men. Pregnant women have higher rates of spontaneous abortion, pregnancy complications, and delivery problems. Marijuana has been linked to a condition known as deranged immune cell factor, leading to childhood cancer. There are higher rates of low birth weight in infants of marijuana smokers and may have such neurological disturbances as tremors and heightened startle response. Women who use opiates during pregnancy will probably give birth to a baby addicted to the drug. These babies are restless, irritable, have tremors, convulsions, fever, vomiting, breathing difficulties. If these babies survive, they cry often and show severe withdrawal symptoms. If they survive, they will always show developmental delays. And my niece gave birth to a baby while she was addicted to opiates. And all of these things happened. But the babies did survive. Last time I talked to my brother, he was doing well, but he had anger issues. He's, what, 6 years old. He's in the 1st grade. And, yeah, he has anger issues. Sometimes I have to take him out of class because he starts throwing things. Cocaine use during pregnancy can cause higher risks of spontaneous abortion, prematurity, low birth weight, small head size. If the babies survive, they may be less alert, not responsive, either emotionally or cognitively, more excitable, more irritable, less able to regulate their sleep patterns. I was working at Children's Hospital in Omaha when cocaine was really, really popular back in the in the 80s, back in the early 80s. And this was our biggest problem. It wasn't opiates, it wasn't marijuana, it was cocaine. And a lot of these babies didn't survive. That is really kind of tragic. I was working in the neonatal intensive care unit, uh, and wow, it was a real tragedy. All these babies born to these wealthy women, and they didn't always survive. We saved all the ones that we could, but sometimes it was just beyond our control. As they grow out of infancy, their lethargy, irritability, and unresponsiveness may prevent the infant from forming a close relationship with their mothers, who may have had other problems as well, like cocaine addiction. The cocaine addicted child may be marked by excessive activity, muscular tension, exaggerated startle response, tremors, and evident antisocial behavior. As the individual gets older, their neurological problems will most likely improve, but their antisocial behavior probably will not. Sexually transmitted infections tend to have several impacts on the developing fetuses and newborns because of their structure and ability to cross the placental barrier. Gonorrhea, also known as the clap, is a bacteria that will not cross the placental barrier, but can do a great deal of scarring in the reproductive organs of both males and females. In females, scarring in the fallopian tube may be so extensive that the zygote is not able to migrate down the tubes to the uterus, or the tubes may be blocked completely. In males, scarring can cause impeded sperm flow through the vas deferens to the point of blockage and sterility. Since gonorrhea is often asymptomatic in women, it is possible for a woman to deliver when she is infected with gonorrhea. If the baby passes through the birth canal when the mother is infected with gonorrhea, the baby may become infected as well. The most serious danger is an infection of the eyes, which will cause blindness. For this reason, silver nitrate is placed in the baby's eyes after delivery. Other problems that might affect a baby include heart infections, lung infections, and joint infections. When I was in the military, every woman that came in who was pregnant, we would check for gonorrhea. The syphilis bacteria, Treponema pallidum, is able to cross the placental barrier. If the fetus is infected, it may result in premature delivery, stillbirth, or congenital syphilis. Genital herpes is a virus that, if present during delivery, can cause blindness and even death. Now, these days, we don't really look for syphilis in newborn babies. But when I was in the service back in the 70s and 80s, we did. And we found one baby with congenital syphilis. Of all the babies, all the thousands of babies that we checked, only one of them, I found only one of them with congenital syphilis. AIDS caused by the HIV or HTLV3 viruses disrupts the body's immune function. The virus can cause the placental barrier, but can cross the placental barrier, but can be blocked if select antiviral drugs are taken by the mother during pregnancy. Unfortunately, these drugs are relatively expensive and therefore rarely available in Africa, where the disease continues to devastate the continent. Babies born with the AIDS virus may develop full-blown disease at any time. Some develop antibodies that destroy the virus before it is allowed to replicate. Despite all the programs in place to assist pregnant women, universal prenatal care still does not always take place. While the national average for women who get late or no prenatal care for all races is 3.9%, for natives the figure is an abysmal 8.6%. Other minorities are also above the national average, including blacks, Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, Hawaiians, and Central and South Americans. Up to 21 weeks, 0% survival rate. There was a baby that survived. The super baby was able to survive. He was 20 weeks gestation, and they saved that baby. These are the old days. 22 weeks. The probability of survival is 10%. 23 weeks, it's 10 to 35% survival rate. 24 weeks, 40 to 70% survival rate. 25 weeks, 50 to 80% survival rate. 26 weeks, 80 to 90% survival rate. 27 weeks, greater than 90% survival rate. The youngest baby to ever survive was born under 20 weeks, as I said, and that baby is known as the super baby. The first stage of delivery is the longest and typically lasts 12 hours or more. In first children, the first stage is longer and becomes exceedingly shorter. The more children a woman has, the shorter the period is. This stage involves contractions of the uterus, causing the tiny hole in the cervix to expand enough to allow the bulk of the baby to pass through. The second stage of labor typically takes 1.5 hours or less. This stage begins when the baby's head begins to move through the cervix and into the vaginal canal. The stage ends when the baby completely emerges from the mother's body. If this stage lasts longer than 2 hours, the physician may use some form of assistance to extract the infant. The third stage lasts 5 to 30 minutes and involves the placenta and the umbilical cord being expelled from the mother's body. This was previously called passing the afterbirth, but names have been changed to protect the delicacy of people's feelings, so we don't call it that anymore. The fourth stage involves a recovery process where the baby and mother both rest and their condition is monitored. Cesarean delivery is a surgical procedure to remove the baby from the uterus by cutting through the abdomen. Cesarean birth rates in the United States are among the highest in the world. Alternative methods of childbirth minimize the use of drugs while maximizing parents' active involvement. And of course, this is known as the bikini cut, and this is the old vertical incision that they used to use. Complications of childbirth, birth trauma may be caused by anoxia, oxygen deprivation, diseases, infections, or physical injury. Low birth weight babies fall into two categories, preterm and small for date. A low birth weight baby, if necessary, is placed in an antiseptic, temperature-controlled crib, known as an incubator, and fed through tubes. 50 years ago, the leading cause of intellectual disability in the United States was a condition in some neonates that did not allow them to metabolize protein properly. This condition caused a buildup of phenylketonuria in the blood, which destroyed brain cells. We've already talked about that. Now, by screening all babies at birth, phenylketonurics can be placed on a special diet and live otherwise normal lives. Hypothyroidism and galactosemia, also known as maple syrup disease, are also screened at birth in most states. One time I went into the nursery and it smelled like somebody had been eating pancakes. And I said something to the nurse, and of course she got all upset and everything. But they'd been in there they'd been in there for an extended length of time, and the babies were peeing, and the babies were defecating. And they didn't even notice it, but because I had just come in new, I smelled this, and I went right to the baby that smelled like pancakes, and I told him, "Look, this baby smells like maple syrup," and they threw me out, but later they discovered the doctor came in. Later, the doctor came in and he said exactly the same thing. So I had discovered a baby with galactosemia. It really does smell like maple syrup. It's their urine that smells like maple syrup. Infant mortality in selected countries around the world in 1990 and 2001 to 2006. There you go. So where are we? We're the United States, and we're way down here. This is infant mortality. So Iceland and Japan are the two top. Look, all of the Scandinavian countries, they do a great job. Infant mortality is way, way down. United States, way down here. That's just tragic. Top infant mortality rates in Sierra Leone, which is an African country, 161 per 100,000. Per 1,000 births. Niger, another African country. Afghanistan, of course, is in Asia. Liberia, another African country. Angola, another African country. Mali, Burkina Faso, Somalia, Cote d'Ivoire, another African country. Rwanda. These are the highest and these are the lowest. We're not even on there. There we are. We have seven deaths per 1,000. And that's the end. I know this has been a long lecture. Sorry about that. Okay. I'll talk to you again next week.